Welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogrammed Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. And Chantal Donnelly, physical therapist and author of Settled, How to Find Calm in a Stress-Inducing World. Here at City Club Los Angeles, we follow our guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Welcome back to the ANEW Insight Podcast. We are back for the second half of our episode with success coach and Dancing in the Kitchen TV star, Ashley Miers at City Club Los Angeles. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Ashley gave us some really fascinating information about her background and her struggles with mental health and how this led her to become a leader and innovator in her field. We are really excited to learn more. Ashley, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yay. So, Dancing in the Kitchen TV. I'm very excited about this. I'm excited to be on it. It presents a very unique blend of cooking and entertainment. Can you describe how the concept came about, and what do you hope viewers take away from this incredibly joyful combination of food and dance?
So, the way that this came about, my good friend and co-producer and DP, Octavia Klein, who's actually in the audience with us tonight.
Hey,
Octavia. She and I have kids that are about the same age. My oldest is the same age as her daughter. And we met through a mom's club, a family collective that we were both a part of. And we had been friends for several years, and I knew that Octavia had a background in photography, but our friendship had really just been about being moms and being friends, and we'd never really picked up the thread and explored anything career-related. And we'd both taken detours during the pandemic or sort of around the same point in our lives. So I had been doing acting and music up until in 2018, I did my Kundalini Yoga teacher training while I was pregnant with my first son. And then in 2019 was when I launched my coaching business. And then obviously the pandemic started at the beginning of 2020. And Octavia had kind of gone on a detour from photography, and she had learned a bunch of business skills. And we were just having a conversation in January of 2023. And she was like, you know, my passion is food photography. And I was like, you know that I want to make a cookbook and a cooking show. And so the idea was born there. And then my friend, one of my best friends, Elizabeth Russo, who's the co-host and songwriting partner of mine, she and I had a songwriting session later that week, and Liz has a beautiful house. And so I was like, Liz, we're going to do a cooking show. And she goes, can I be your sous chef? And I was like, yes, can we use your house? And she was like, yes.
It is a really beautiful kitchen. I thought it was a studio kitchen. It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. She doesn't have kids. It helps.
Exactly. It can stay gorgeous that way.
Yeah. Kids are kind of like little pack rats. Mine are always like bringing things in. I'm like, why are there rocks on the counter?
Exactly. They're just smearing stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah. So that was kind of the inception of it. And it just really kind of took off and went from there. We shot every month for, I don't even know if it was like 6-7 months of 2023, and then took a break over the holidays. And then had this very fortuitous thing happen at the beginning of 2024. We had started putting out the episodes, and a producer that I honestly don't know how I was connected with on Facebook saw one of my posts about it. And he contacted us and said he loved the concept, loved what we were doing, and wanted to put it up on his network on Roku, the Flamingo Network.
Yay.
Yeah. So that was great momentum. And, you know, we've been filming all year this year as well, and starting to bring on guests and working on getting partnerships and sponsorships, and just really working to grow our impact and reach more people, because we love what we do and the content we feel is great.
Awesome.
We're making it to help people, and we want to get it in front of more people to do that.
What made you decide to incorporate dance? How did that all come about? I mean, it's really informative. It's really engaging. How do you integrate those elements for the viewer's experience?
So I have another female friend. Her name is Femke. She's a music producer in Nashville, and she helps develop and launch artists. And so sometimes I consult with her about what I'm doing in music and get her guidance. And she told me that someone had told her a really good piece of advice, which was that everything you do should sell everything else you do. And so I knew I wanted to do a cooking show, but I didn't really have a concept for it. I was like, what's the angle? Like, what are we actually, what are we going to do though? Right. Besides just like, here's some yummy food that we like.
Right.
And so that was the idea that got me to think like, how can I make music and cooking go together? And there was a song that I'd been listening to by a band called Laney called Dancing in the Kitchen that I loved. And I was like, that's it. We'll combine music and food and have that elevate your mood. That's our tagline. And it all kind of came from there. And so I ended up doing a cover of Laney's song that we used as the theme song for the show for the first year. And then Liz and I are actually just finishing up our own Dancing in the Kitchen song, which was an interesting writing experiment because I'm not used to trying to come up with a similar concept without ripping off another artist. Like, that's never something I've ever done of like, this artist wrote this song, I want to write something similar.
Right.
You
were inspired by it.
Right. So it was kind of a fun exercise of like, how do I not be influenced by this song that they did and now come up with something new that speaks to what we're doing? And I actually, no offense, Laney, love it better.
Well, for people who haven't seen it, describe what that dancing looks like. What do you do?
Yeah. So we feature a recipe in each segment. So for Roku, we do 3 segments, and that makes an episode. And each segment is also its own standalone YouTube episode. And so in each segment, we'll have a theme. So we started, for instance, with the theme of depression, and then we would have sort of subtopics. So for the first one, we talked about iron and iron deficiency and how anemia and the symptoms of anemia can, be very similar, to depression. And so the importance of going and getting lab work and making sure that there isn't a nutritional deficiency before you go in for more invasive treatments, right?
Or medication.
Exactly. And so we'll speak about something along those lines, a subject that's relevant to mental health that incorporates the nutrition. And then we'll feature ingredients that contain that nutrient we're talking about. So grass-fed, regenerative, organic ground beef, leafy greens. And then we'll feature a recipe that incorporates those ingredients to make a meal. And we set it all to music and make it fun and uplifting. Liz brings a lot of comic relief too. She's very witty, and I love that aspect of it because I can get a little bit nerdy and like, and she lightens things up and keeps us on our toes. And then we literally will like dance to the song and incorporate that in as we're cooking and preparing the recipe.
Right.
Yeah. So we like to say that we help people tune up just by tuning in.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you are using nutrition to help aspects of mental health. That's definitely becoming more of a field, nutritional psychology, which is what I practice and I'm very, very passionate about. Give us a background about you, or give us an idea of your background in nutrition and how that informs this show.
Yeah. So a lot of my nutrition background is actually self-taught. My college only offered 2 classes in nutrition, so I took them both. But they didn't have a degree in it. Otherwise, I probably would have done that degree. Yeah. And then I also had a minor in biology and was very interested in like microbiology and understanding, the role of various nutrients and how those affect like the Krebs cycle and just like all these different aspects of our functioning at that level. So I learned as much as I could about it in college, and then I would just read and consume and, anything I could get my hands on. There was a magazine I used to love. I'm trying to remember what it was called. I don't know if I can anymore, but I would just read it religiously in college, and I would try to like, again, nerd alert, but I would try to like memorize the different nutrients and like what they did and what their function was in the body and, even the names of them. So, folic acid and folate versus just like B9 and, and more complicated things than that. But I would have kind of fun intellectual adventures with myself of like, can I memorize this and know what it means and be able to like understand how it fits with other things? And I think that's just kind of like how my brain likes to work out.
So how does that inform your episodes? You just choose like a different topic? Is it always about mental health, or is it, more inclusive, like physical functioning? And
Yeah, I feel like we branched out a bit this year in some ways, but I try to keep it on trend with mental health because that's really that's the core of our show. And so all different aspects of that, because mental health is affected by so many different things. So obviously nutrition being huge, but also exercise, sleep, learning various therapies and practicing them. So we try to pull all of that in. And so sometimes there is a bit of a departure from just being straight about like the ingredient and the nutrient involved and whatnot. And maybe we'll speak to something like we have a guest coming on who's going to be teaching us a dance, and we're going to be focusing more on that aspect of it and like the somatic and movement. So yeah, we have a lot of fun just pulling in all these various topics that are relevant to mental health and to nutrition and to music, and just blending them together and playing with them and trying to share something useful.
Absolutely. I love that you have this, and I think more people, if they knew about the power of nutrition to help them not just physically but with their mental health, more people would be gravitating towards foods that help them in this arena. I think that we're just inundated in a food environment. It's pretty toxic that, you have so much ultra-processed food out there, a lot of misinformation. So I'm really, really glad that you're doing this kind of work and helping people to learn about how nutrition helps their mental health. Your efforts have not only been on a personal level, but also on a community focus with your role in this local family collective. What have been some of the most rewarding aspects of this community leadership, and describe it for our audience so we know what that is?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, my co-producer, DP, Octavia, and I met through what was at the time called the Silver Lake Moms Club and is now the Silver Lake Family Collective. I joined it when I was pregnant with my first son, and my passion for it really comes from, I feel like my experience of motherhood would have been so drastically different without that support and that community. Being up at 3 a.m, breastfeeding and maybe being anxious about something and being able to text other moms and, like, what is this? And that kind of support, just to not feel alone and isolated and like the anxiety of new motherhood and trying to figure it out. I was put into like a play group with several other moms that all had babies, my baby's age. And that group of women, we still keep in touch. It's almost 6 years later.
Wow.
And because of the experience I had and what that did for me in terms of making my motherhood journey really enjoyable, it made me really passionate about wanting to give that to other moms and have them get to have that opportunity too. And I mean, you may be familiar with these statistics, but the leading cause of death in new moms in the first year postpartum is actually suicide. So it's so crucial for new moms to have support and connection, community, and like normalization. People get intrusive thoughts. People have postpartum depression. And, being someone who's come from a recovery background, I am lucky. I got to go through a lot of really challenging things before I got into that experience, right?
Yes.
But what about the people who go into that experience and have no tools and no coping and are isolated and alone? And now they've got like a little baby that's depending on them too. I mean, yeah, it's a family collective and it's lighthearted and fun and we go to the park and we play, but it's so much more meaningful and so much more important than just that, right? Because it could be a lifeline.
Right. And so how big is this group?
So before the pandemic, I want to say it was, if I remember correctly, I want to say it was 100. It might have been 2.
Wow.
It wasn't huge, but it was sizable. And now we actually took a break. I was the president for 2 years, and then I went through some challenges. I lost my older brother. He disappeared, and we actually just don't know where he is or what happened to him. So that's been a very challenging thing. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, my life has been crazy. But again, like we were speaking about earlier, I feel like it gives me sort of a superpower of being able to sit with people in their pain, because what I've experienced has been so crazy and so extreme that there's not a lot I can't hold space for. Yeah. And because I've been through so much and I've had a lot of recovery, I've been equipped with a lot of tools to be able to cope with that intensity as well. But that being said, when he went missing, I took kind of a step back, and so now we're actually getting it started again, and I think we're at like maybe 40 people. So.
Wow, I'm so sorry to hear about your brother. That has to be devastating, especially not knowing where he is and having no clue at this point still?
No clue. Yeah. So it's been a wild ride, but you know, some of the things that comfort me, my mom really wants to know like what happened.
I'm sure. I
kind of like to imagine him like dancing in Ibiza or like meditating at Shaolin or like any number of happy endings, you know, and that I feel like I'm more able to be comfortable in the unknown of it. And also like he was a very enigmatic, sort of cryptic character. And I feel like it was on brand. Like he wouldn't have wanted to have like a basic ending, right? Like,
oh my goodness.
So I don't know. It sort of makes me smile because it's like if it was the end, he was himself to the end, almost in a way of like mysterious, he was going to leave us wondering. Yeah.
Leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
Well, I really hope that you do find him, and I hope that that's not the end. But if it is, you know, you have this lovely place where you put him in your heart. And I think that that's what really matters, just, you know, ultimately for all of us, no matter who we lose or how we lose them. It's where we put them in our heart that really matters. So
I agree with that.
I'm sorry you had to deal with that.
Thank you.
It's inspired you, though, and it has really created kind of this, you're building kind of an empire, it seems like, and you're doing so much advocacy work. You reach an international audience at this point. What are some of the common challenges that you see women facing globally in mental health, and how does your work address this?
Yeah, so I would say that what we were talking about earlier, that stigma is pervasive. And in some cultures, it's maybe, I mean, not even maybe, in some cultures, it is definitely worse than it is in the United States. I think that conversation is being had a lot more frequently in our culture these days. But, you know, generally the women I work with are in like Canada, United States, Australia, Ireland, United Kingdom, things like that. Yeah. So there's a commonality to the cultures. Right. But that isolation, that sense of like, I'm the only person that's like this, nobody would understand, I can't tell people, that has been ubiquitous among like everybody I've worked with. And they are surrounded by people that are not able to support them in the way that they need. And whether that's, you know, because they're engaging in toxic relationships or it's a family system and a dynamic, and, you know, you've kind of got the, what do they call that? The prescribed patient, or there's a term for it, where people kind of get pigeonholed into these roles, and you have to keep playing your role in the family. And if you try to break out of it, the rest of the system will put pressure on you.
Identified patient.
There you go. They'll put pressure on you to get back in your lane, stay in your role. And so a lot of times it's kind of like fish in water. These women don't have any experience other than what their sort of dysfunction or their despair has been. And when they connect with me, it offers them a whole different paradigm that's available to them of like, this is actually possible, right? And so then it's about them having the courage and the commitment to start to travel the path to find their new paradigm of like, who do they actually really want to be versus who do they feel like they have to be.
Wow. What do you think are the most common difficulties that these women are facing? Is it the fact that they're pigeonholed? Is it the fact that they would like to be achieving a career, getting more education? What do you think is the most common thing that you see?
It's interesting because I wouldn't say it's necessarily like one specific thing, like a career or an education. It's different for different people, but I feel like the through line tends to be that, again, like we talked about on the previous segment, they're not being true to themselves in some way. Okay. And so whatever that means for them, maybe they're a homemaker, but they wish they had a career. Or maybe they have a career, but they wish that they were a mom, right? Yeah. So it could be complete opposite. But ultimately, it's sort of more about their being who they feel like they're supposed to be, or what they're trying to play by the rules. But those rules aren't lighting up their heart, and those rules aren't speaking to their authenticity.
Yeah.
And so then it's about how do we get you on track with like who you really are and what you really want. And even if that means that we lose certain things that we've held on to really tightly, like certain relationships or, you know, and it's interesting because, yeah, it really does change. I had a client, this has been kind of funny because I had a moment of like, wow, is this really happening? I've had a number of clients who have been nurses, doctors, I've even had therapists, and I find that kind of comical because I'm none of those things. But I had a client who was a doctor who had been laid off and had a whole crisis of confidence around it, understandably so. Yeah. But she still wanted to be a doctor, and that was her goal, and we got her back on track, and, you know, she went back into the job interview process, and she found another position, and, like, now she's thriving and completely lit up. Wow. For somebody else, they might be doing a career that isn't their truth, and they need to do something different. I had another client who had been a nurse her whole life and had retired and was living in her hometown with her family, and it just wasn't her thing. Yeah. And so she was extremely depressed, and her lifelong dream had been to move to New York City, and she wanted to like study photography and I think learn Italian. And
wow.
Yeah. And so that became the goal, and she actually moved to New York City and she made her dream come true. And Yay. I mean, to get to witness people going from that's not possible for me to I did it. I mean, I'm the lucky one getting to do this career, gratifying. To get to witness that, yeah, and support that.
I'm sure you also see, I see this a lot in my practice, women who feel like they have to do everything. They have to have the career, they have to have the family, they have to do everything and be everything for their family, and they often put themselves last. And I always encourage them to really care for themselves and put themselves first. I'm sure you probably see that as well with your clients.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a tricky thing because, I mean, I'm a mom. I'm, 40, and I almost feel like that's one of the most tricky places for me to speak to because I don't know how to tell moms of young kids to stop doing it all. Like, there's a lot that you can't stop doing when you're in certain stages of your life.
True. And
if you don't have the support or you don't have the resources, like, that's part of the nuance of, like, figuring out how to make it work for each person of, like, what's realistic right now, right? Like, there might be the ideal, and then there might be what can we do right now to just move in the right direction. Yeah. Because some people can do some huge transformative life shift, but not everybody is able to do that right in this particular moment. And so, yeah, it really becomes about, again, just, I was thinking earlier when we were talking about Kundalini, there's one of the sort of fundamental things that we practice is Satnam, truth is my identity. And so I'm always telling my clients that it's not about what I think. It's not whatever my truth is of your experience. It's like you discerning for yourself what your truth is and honoring that. And that's, I think, what is really important. Because, I do see women trying to do it all, and I feel like it's a fallacy that our whole culture has been, like, gaslit with.
Yes, I agree.
I could go off on that, yeah.
Me too. Well, before we go off on other things, we want to know how to find you. How do people get a hold of you? What's your Instagram handle? I follow her. It's awesome. Give people your 411, and then we're going to open up for questions from our audience.
Sure. So my Instagram is Ashley_Miers_official, and Miers is spelled strangely. It's I before E, so Miers. Dancing in the Kitchen is dancinginthekitchen.tv. And you can also find everything about me from speaking to music to, coaching, everything at ashleymiers.com.
Yay! Okay. Well, we are so excited that we have a lovely audience here, and we would love to open it up for questions from our audience. Come on down to the microphone. Don't be shy.
I was wondering what type of food you make in the TV show that you do.
Yeah, so we like to make healthy food that supports mood and mental health. We also sometimes just make tasty, fun food because enjoying food is just as important as, eating all your superfoods and your vegetables. And getting all the right nutrients in. So we don't want to perpetuate that eating disorder culture of restriction.
Yes, please.
Yeah. But that being said, I personally like to follow more of a paleo approach. I found for myself that eating mainly produce, a lot of vegetables, a bit of fruit, high quality protein, healthy fats. So for me, that's like wild fish. It's, nuts, lentils, those kinds of things. That does my body really right. And I tend to minimize grains and like carbs, processed foods, obviously. So that's kind of what I bring to it and what I found that's worked for me. But we also say on the show, just like we said a moment ago, discern your own truth, and different bodies are different and need different things. It depends on if you have a medical condition. It depends on a lot of things. And Liz is a vegetarian. So with most of the recipes that we prepare, we will also give like a vegetarian option or a way that the recipe can be modified to suit a vegetarian diet. And yeah, we just kind of like to explore and learn as we go as well. So we're always kind of experimenting.
Wonderful. I love that you give kind of all options, and that nutrition is really personal. It really does depend on how your body incorporates it, what, fuels you, how you feel when you're eating it. So I really like that you make it varied for people. I think that that's really wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, we have another question. Come on down.
Wow. Ashley, thank you so much for these inspiring stories. And it's been a lot that you go through, right, from the beginning, from your darkness, and then all the way coming out and shining so much and dancing and laughing now with like so many of your viewers and all that. So my question to you is like, it looks like that you've been doing so much, right? Like on the dancing with the kitchen, and you have the coaching, and you have the music aspect, and all of that in between, and your family as well. I just wanted to see, like, in terms of your, like, it's like really running the business, but also on the side of helping, like, in terms of the purpose, helping others, right? How do you, like, what are few key ingredients that you think that kind of keeps you to be successful in this journey of health and wellness, of helping others to achieve this balanced lifestyle?
I love that.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Comes from a beautiful human as well.
I love that. Yeah. So it's interesting because I think that if we allow it to, whatever our struggle or our darkness was becomes the thing that we're able to teach if we're able to heal it, right? And like meet the challenge that, or the opportunity that it presents. And so for me, I used to like lament when I was in my 20s that whenever I would try to work a full-time job, just like a regular 9 to 5, I would burn out because I wasn't able to exercise. I like wasn't able to take care of my chores, my laundry, my grocery shopping, whatever the things that I like to do and that I feel I need to do in order for me to be well and balanced and healthy. And so then into the week would come, and Saturday, Sunday, I would be exhausted and just like recovering, doing laundry, maybe getting groceries. It was like, how do I even go to a doctor appointment? And I have to like miss work. It was just that whole paradigm, that whole structure didn't feel intuitively or intrinsically right to me.
Yes.
And the blessing and the curse of it was that like I would just keep burning out and falling into depression, and I wasn't able to sustain it. And in my 20s I would be like, how do other people do this? And
I still ask that question.
Yeah. And I think maybe they just had more ability to sort of put up with that in a certain way, but that didn't mean they were healthy and that they were well in the midst of it, right? Like maybe they were tolerating it, but they weren't necessarily thriving.
Right.
And so then when I launched my coaching business, and also with, the suicide attempts I referenced earlier, I was going for a run one morning, and I often at that point in my life would be like, why did I survive? Like most people don't survive even one of the things that I did. And then I kind of had this light bulb go off one day where I was like, because now I can help other people. Like this prepared me to be able to like sit in this space with people and not judge and not be afraid and to help them. And so same thing with the sort of like I wasn't able to force myself square peg into that round hole in
Yeah.
terms of doing it the way we're told we're supposed to do it. And so what I've found for myself and how I like to balance my life is exercise is essential, nutrition is essential, sleep is essential,
Yes.
relationships and support are essential. And so that's the foundation. Those are the building blocks. Those are the non-negotiables for me.
Yes.
And then I build in the work, on top of that, and family is essential as well. So, one thing I found with having kids is that it's an ever-changing landscape. Like, the goalposts are always moving. So as soon as I start to get used to a schedule that I've created, there's a new schedule.
Yeah.
We have like a 3-week summer schedule of like summer school and swimming lessons, and then school starts and it's a new schedule, and then baby number 3 comes and it's a new schedule.
No.
So, I'm being a little tangential, but I'll get back to the main point in just a second, which is that I have found that earlier on in my recovery, I felt the need to be very rigid, right? Like, I need to go to an AA meeting every day for 90 days and then again for 90 days for 6 months straight. And I have to do all these things to be okay. And at the time, that was my truth. But when I had kids, it started being about, I have to learn what I can relax and how I can be flexible and still be okay.
Yeah.
And that was very triggering because it was scary. Like, I depend on my structure. I depend on these things that, like, I exercise every day and that's how I stay. If I don't have that, I won't be okay. Can I be okay if I relax that a little bit? And at this point in my life, I find that I don't need to be rigid and I'm much more adaptable. And with like baby number 3, I'm like, I don't know what's going to be happening that day, but we'll just put what support in place we can and we'll go with what's happening in the moment. And first baby was like, I got lists. So I guess, long story short and kind of coming back to that main point, I feel like I'm constantly reinventing my structure and I'm doing it intuitively. I'm basing it on what is the need right now and doing my best to be adaptable where I need to be, but also staying committed to the things that I know are really essential for me. And that for me is the self-care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I talk about this a lot, but I practice what I call militant self-care. And it's only because it's mandatory. Like, I agree with you that you have to be flexible with it for things that come up, but I feel really lucky that I've been able to structure my life in a way that I can have as much self-care as I want and need before I sit with clients. I have the no talking before 11 rule. Sorry, you want to come see me early, you're not going to be able to. You can see me late. But that gives me the chance and the opportunity to take care of myself and feed myself well and walk my doggies and, feed my family and do everything that I need to do so that I can be present and sit down with people. And I really encourage people to do that. I don't think women especially do that enough. And it helps you to be a better helper.
I agree.
And that's the important thing. Ashley, you're amazing. You're amazing.
You're amazing.
As soon as I met you, I was like, yay. I'm
Me
so
too.
glad. Yay, she's on my show. Hooray.
Yay, she's on my show. Coming up.
So we are just very lucky and very grateful for having you on the show. And I would sit here for another hour with you if I could.
Likewise.
But we are out of time. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for tuning into the ANEW Body Insight Podcast at City Club Los Angeles. We look forward to our next exciting interview and really hope you join us next time. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Body Insight Podcast. Please remember, the content shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Body Insight Podcast tab. Follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.